Hey there, everybody. It's your pal Tim, and welcome to Good Seats, still available. We have altered the format this week to bring to you sadly, a special commemorative episode to reflect on the life of one of the pioneers, frankly, of this little genre that we've carved out for ourselves over the years in the realm of forgotten sports and teams and leagues no longer with us. And that is the passing, sadly, of Dennis Murphy. Two-time former guest here on this show, and absolutely one of the very few folks in the pantheon of challenger leagues and innovators in the realm of professional sports. As you may know from our previous episodes, in particular, episode number 129, where we talk about the old American Basketball Association, Dennis Murphy was the co-founder of that back in the late 60s. Some great conversations we had not only with him, but some other folks around the old ABA, Pat Boone, for example, and the Oakland Oaks and that kind of stuff. So look up that episode as well. And again, on episode number 179, we had a shorter conversation, but we started to scratch the surface a little bit about the World Hockey Association, another league that Dennis Murphy co-founded. I mean, to say that this gentleman was full of energy and entrepreneurialism as it affected the realm of pro sports is an understatement, maybe perhaps matched only by his longtime and often colleague, Gary Davidson, who was still with us and hopefully will be part of our conversations coming up sooner rather than later. But Dennis Murphy was a Renaissance man in many respects. He passed away on July 15th, just this, as we're recording this past Thursday, and lived to the ripe old age, God bless, of 94. He moved to California after having been born in Shanghai, China, having served at the U.S. Army in World War II. Went to USC, majored in economics. We know that he was very much a diehard USC Trojans sports fan, very well involved with the Alumni Association and all that kind of stuff. But he's an innovator and entrepreneur that he's probably most best known for in his professional sports endeavors. As mentioned, he co-founded the American Basketball Association back in 1967. He co-founded with Gary Davidson and some others the World Hockey Association in 1972. He co-founded, as we've hinted at in previous conversations, and hopefully with a few others to come, the World Team Tennis Group with Billie Jean King and her then husband at the time in 1974, World Team Tennis. And also co-founded Roller Hockey International. 1993, a couple of decades after his excursions in the 70s. Our great conversation with Richard Neil Graham went into great depth around that, and hopefully a conversation to come with Jeannie Buss, who most know before sort of ascending the mantle of NBA world champion, and her family exploits kind of got her start. It cut her teeth, if you will, with the team in Los Angeles at the time with Roller Hockey International, arguably sort of an unsung, if you will, co-founder, or at least foundational participant in that league in the 1990s. Regardless, it's safe to say that Dennis Murphy is one of the most notable entrepreneurs and challengers, if you will, in modern day professional sports. You could make the argument, perhaps with alongside Gary Davidson, Dennis Murphy is responsible for many innovations, both large and small, that live on, that exist today in professional sports that, frankly, without his tinkering, his chutzpah, his ability to sell franchises and the big, bold ideas about what could be done in various pro sports that ultimately spun out of his head, the world is a lesser place now missing the great Dennis Murphy. So without any further ado, we offer to you a look back to what we're going to do is condense two versions of previous conversations that we had with Dennis. Our episode number 129 about mostly about the American Basketball Association from 2019, and our episode number 179, our smaller but concentrated conversation around the World Hockey Association. Please enjoy these previous conversations with the late, great, and already missed Dennis Murphy, and please enjoy, and thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.
glorified street ball. The red, white, and blue ball was viewed as a joke. The three-point shot was viewed as a gimmick.
We were free and wild, and the times were free and wild.
We was entertaining. I mean, that was my style of play, playground ball.
It's just a good feeling. You just open up and let your creative juices flow.
Whatever was outrageous anywhere else, it was that much more outrageous in the ABA because, what the hell, we didn't have anything to lose.
Welcome to Good Seats Still Available, a curious little podcast devoted to exploring what used to be in professional sports. Here's your host, Tim Hanlon.
Oh my goodness. Well, this is an episode we have been waiting for some time to get on the air, and we are happy to drop it this week. Hello again, everyone. My name is Tim Hanlon, and this is Good Seats Still Available, our curious little podcast that is devoted to what used to be in professional sports. Thank you tremendously for finding us out there in podcast land. We appreciate it. And we hope we delight you this week in an extraordinarily special way. We present to you this week an episode that has been many months in the making and is frankly the beginning of what we hope is a multi-episode journey. And it is with great delight and distinction that we're able to bring you finally a conversation with perhaps one of the very short-listed group of men, people, figures, heroes, if you will, of our little genre of forgotten sports. His name is Dennis Murphy. And if you don't know who he is, in short order, this is perhaps the most quintessential entrepreneur in modern professional sports history. The man who either single-handedly or amongst a small group of men led efforts to create many challenger leagues that redefined the shape and the scope and the size and the future, if you will, of professional sports in this country. Dennis Murphy is in the pantheon, the Mount Rushmore of not only forgotten sports teams and leagues, but frankly of professional sports generally. We heard a little bit of some of the shenanigans that he helped usher in the late 1960s, early 1970s with the American Basketball Association, the challenger, if you will, the butt kicker to the NBA, the staid and relatively colorless, in many respects, National Basketball Association. And that was just the first of many professional Challenger League adventures for this one, Dennis Murphy, who we are honored to have a conversation with. And by the way, we are dropping this episode around, the early part of September of this year. This will be, as of September 4th, 2019, Dennis Murphy's 93rd birthday. God bless. You will hear, though, despite the age in the voice, amazing recollections and intrigue around the formation of, in our first conversation with Dennis, the old American Basketball Association. And during the course of this conversation, we'll also get into the beginnings of another league that he started right after that, the World Hockey Association. Both leagues that we've talked about in previous episodes with previous guests, but without which or without whom this conversation, or Dennis Murphy, his efforts, those two leagues and others such as Roller Hockey International and elements of World Team Tennis and the World Football League, all of those and others, Dennis Murphy was either solely or largely responsible for starting. And we cannot wait to get this conversation to you. Our conversation with the great Dennis Murphy coming up in just a few moments of any of the shows that we've delivered to you over these 2.5 years. This one is one for the ages, and we encourage you to sit back and enjoy it in just a few moments. Of course, we want to encourage you to celebrate this first of hopefully a few episodes with the great Dennis Murphy by going to many of our sponsors this week, why don't you, to celebrate, in this case, both the wonders that were the ABA and the WHA. In no particular order, here are the places you need to go. How about oldschoolshirts.com? Of course, you can use the promo code there, oldschoolshirts.com, promo code GOODSEATS for 10% off all of your great purchases. You're going to find tremendous shirts from both the World Hockey Association and the American Basketball Association. Check them out, oldschoolshirts.com. Check out the colors, check out the logos. You'll even find some Roller Hockey International shirts there, and use that promo code GOODSEATS for 10% off all of your purchases. Once you're done there, hop on over to 503 Sports. That's 503-sports.com. Well, not only are you going to find t-shirts from the WHA and the American Basketball Association, but you will also find jerseys that have been handcrafted and recreated from both of those leagues. You're going to find some caps there too, some really smart looking caps. Again, from both the leagues of Dennis Murphy's imagination, the WHA and the ABA. And of course, we've got a promo code for you there at 503 Sports. Again, 503-sports.com. Use the promo code SEATS and you're going to get 10% off all of your purchases there. So we thank our friends at 503 Sports. And once you're done there, you want to dial your web browser over to streakersports.com and hit their defunct leagues section under their special collections tab. And in the defunct leagues, you will find, yes, the WHA and yes, the ABA, but you'll also find a bunch of other leagues that Dennis was part of, including Roller Hockey International. They are all there for you at streakersports.com. And not only will you'll find all the great shirts. It's probably the most comprehensive of all the sites out there, and you're going to be able to find wonderful stuff there and use a promo code there too. And that's Good Seats. Good Seats, the promo code at streakersports.com. Again, look at the defunct league section under ABA and the WHA, and you're going to find great stuff there at streakersports.com. So check them all out, will you? That's 503-sports.com, promo code SEATS. oldschoolshirts.com, promo code GOODSEATS, and streakersports.com, promo code GOODSEATS. Pick one, pick them all. They're all there for you. The American Basketball Association, the World Hockey Association, two of the many leagues that our guest this week, Dennis Murphy, had a distinct hand in founding. And here is our conversation with the great Dennis Murphy as we regale in all kinds of memories about both of those leagues and then some. Please sit back and enjoy. We focus on this show on various teams and leagues that are no longer with us for whatever reasons. And
yeah, like for heaven's sakes, you guys had one of the greatest he's one of the greatest hockey players of all time in Bobby Hull. And he was the one who helped make the World Hockey Association.
Well, sure. But let's start actually with basketball because actually, you know what? I actually want to start even before the ABA. I want to know how you got involved in being basically the largest and biggest challenger guy to all kinds of professional sports in the first place. How did you even get to starting this ABA thing? What was your background that got you interested in challenging the establishment of sports?
Well, the establishment of sports. I was born in Shanghai, China. And before World War II, my family came back to the United States. My dad was with the Standard Oil Company. And so we came back to the United States. And we landed in West Los Angeles, where I went to high school. And then in high school, I went from high school to the service, and when I got out of the military, I decided, to go to the University of Southern California, and that's where I met my wife and had a lot of wonderful years at USC, and at that time I met a guy by the name of Jim Hardy, who was the quarterback on our football team, and Jim became the Coliseum manager. Well, I went on and got called back in the Korean War, and after the Korean War, I came back to California, and at that particular time, I bought a home in Buena Park, California, and became its mayor. And while I was mayor, I got to know the Knotts family and a lot of nice people. And so the American Football League was run by a guy by the name of Al Davis, who you, I'm sure, know very well. and Al Davis wanted to put a team in Orange County. So he called Jim Hardy and asked Jim if he knew anybody in Orange County that could do that. And so Jim called me, and I said, yeah, I'll try. So what we did is we got the Knotts family involved, and we put a doubleheader football game, a high school game, and then a pro game at the Anaheim Stadium. And we got 47,000 people at the game, so we were all excited about the fact that we were going to maybe get a football team in Orange County. Unfortunately for us, the two leagues merged. Al Davis and the National Football League got together, and so we were down the tubes and that. But the Knotts family said, hey, let's try to see if we can do something else. And so that's when we went and started the American Basketball Association. First thing I did was get a hold of Bill Sharman, who at one time was a very great, well, he's on the Hall of Fame at USC, and he gave us a lot of good ideas. And one of the ideas he thought might be a good one that would help us was the three-point play. So between him and I, we got the votes to go for the three-point play. And so that's how the three-point play started. And so that was basically the way we started the ABA.
So Dennis, why basketball then? After your football experiences and Orange County with a potential for a football team and all that, why did you decide, or why did your colleagues think about basketball being kind of the thing to pursue versus, say, football or some other sport?
Well, they asked me what I thought we should do, go into basketball or hockey, and I didn't know very much about hockey at the time, so I said basketball was the place to be, and of course, having Bill Sharman was certainly helpful,
So what goes in then to the thinking about how to put a league together? Where do you start, right? So you've got the idea for basketball. Clearly, Orange County, a growing area that could support probably a lot of different pro sports, right? So probably going to be part of it. How do you go about hustling, I guess, or putting together the people and the money maybe to even take this from an idea to an actuality?
Well, the money part was no problem because, of course, the Knott's Berry Farm people are very, very wealthy, and the other people that I put together with Knott's Berry Farm were equally as well wealthy, so we didn't have any problem with the money. But the big problem was, as you said, was to get the people. So what happened is they just said, well, let's start moving around, and all the guys that were involved with us in the beginning gave us the list of names, and so we started traveling a lot. Matter of fact, I was on an airplane, I would say 90% of the time, and we traveled a lot, met a lot of nice people that eventually joined us in the basketball world.
It seems to me that the NBA at the time was especially vulnerable to a challenge because it was probably the youngest of the major pro leagues, and it seems to me also that the style of play was also a little, shall we say, conservative and classic, and maybe even financially the NBA wasn't all that strong either. Did that enter into your thinking too?
Not really, because at that particular time, we thought the NBA was very, very strong, and they were. There were only 6 teams in the NBA at the time. And so they decided to stick with the 6 because they were all doing very well. And because we came on the scene, they also became involved in expanding. So because they wanted to try to stop us, Red Auerbach was the leader in the group, and Red was very intelligent and a very nice guy. And as time went on, we got to be friends. And Red was very active in promoting, of course, basketball.
How did you convince people to become owners? As you know, we had Pat Boone on a number of months ago, and he specifically says that you were the reason that he became convinced that he should be an owner in this fledgling American Basketball Association. How did you get people like Pat Boone and others to cough up the money to join you in this interesting pursuit?
Well, I just told them that I thought it was time for basketball to expand from the 6 teams the NBA had, and I thought that this was the time to do it. And so they joined me, and we moved ahead, and I was so lucky to have such great owners like Pat Boone. And it was just one of those things that just developed, you know. Pat was involved with us, and he owned the Oakland team in our league, and he was just a very, very, very nice person, and he played a lot of basketball himself over his high school and college time, and I got to know him very, very well, and Pat is one of the nicest people you'd ever meet in this world.
How did you go about, besides the money and the owners, getting the players and George Mikan at that matter, right? George Mikan was your first commissioner, correct?
That is absolutely correct. Well, my next door neighbor, you know, it's funny how things work out in life. My next door neighbor was a friend of George Mikan, and he suggested George Mikan. And so he called George, and George at that time was through his basketball, you know, days as far as players concerned. So when I went back to see him, we got along just terrifically, and George was a wonderful guy and had a lot of interest, of course, in basketball because he was at that time Mr. Basketball. So he got involved, and we went from there. But it was because of my neighbor, and that's one of those things that happen in life. You just never know what happens, you know. And it just so happened that he was one of my neighbors, and he knew George. So it was one of those things that happen that makes this world go around, I guess.
Well, he certainly gave some instant credibility to what you were putting together. I'm curious, was he the one responsible or for that the league came to bring the 3-point play, the 3-point shot, the shot clock, the red, white, and blue ball? Maybe we get back to that in a second. But basketball wise, how did you guys decide to come up with some of these more innovative rules?
Well, I had two very good partners, and Gary Davidson and Don Reagan, and they were both UCLA guys, and we used to have a lot of fun between UCLA and SC, and they became my partners. They were both lawyers, young lawyers from UCLA of all places. We had a lot of fun on that, but they and us and myself and were basically we came up with the rules and all that stuff together with Bill Sharman. George actually just took over the administrative part of the league and did a wonderful, wonderful job.
When you finally took the court, when did you kind of know that you had something here? The cities, for example. Like, how did you go about choosing the cities?
When I was doing my traveling, I used to go the first place I'd go to in any city that I didn't know anything about. I'd go see the Chamber of Commerce and talk to the guys who ran the Chamber of Commerce, and that's basically the way I met some of the people that I did, and from that was the way we got the thing started.
How much were you asking for a franchise to get things going? Do you remember how much was the cost of entry?
You know what? That's $25,000. But $25,000 was a lot of money at that time. But can you imagine $25,000 when they're getting billions for the teams today? It's amazing.
But so was that relatively easy? I mean, sure, 25,000 was certainly a sum then, but was it relatively easy to get people to do that? I suspect it wasn't all that hard, or was it? Because this was such a brand.
Well, every city that I would go to, I talked to the Chamber of Commerce guys, and they would give me the guys who they thought, not who I thought, but who they thought would be involved with and be happy to be involved with a sports team for their city. So that's basically the way it worked out. And the three of us, Gary and Don and myself, we Gary was the front guy, Don was the lawyer, and I was the organizer. So basically, I did a lot of traveling at that time. Matter of fact, I didn't see my wife for about very few times during that period because I was doing a lot of traveling, and so basically that's what it came down to.
Was there a type of owner or prospective owner? Was there like a profile of a person, like where they got their money, or they were sports fans, or I'm just curious, their business dealings, real estate? Was there any sort of profile or obvious candidate that you would typically look for to get somebody involved?
No, basically, I let the Chamber of Commerce guys give me the questions that you asked, like who's interested in sports and who had the money to support a team and all that stuff. I let the Chamber of Commerce guys give me the information because they knew a lot more about those people than I did, certainly. And on the whole, they did a pretty darn good job.
So when this is launching in the late 60s, so you've got a pretty good geographical representation, a few cities with current NBA teams and a whole bunch without them. So give us an idea of those first couple of weeks when the games actually started. When did you know that you were onto something, and then that maybe this ABA thing was going to really resonate with fans and the players?
Well, basically, as an organizer, I was mostly involved in getting out and meeting all these fine people. And the way it worked out was their interest in basketball sometimes also showed some interest in some other sport as well, or maybe in their cases, they thought more of some other sport rather than basketball. Like in Chicago's case, we had the Kaisers, who were involved with our hockey teams. So it was through the contacts that we had in the basketball that led us to decide after the basketball. I being the organizer, after I organized the league, I mean, I was not doing very much at that time. So because of that fact, and I moved into these other sports and met people like the Kaisers and Bobby Hull and all these wonderful people that helped us start the World Hockey Association.
Okay, I want to get to the WHA in a minute, but let me just ask you a couple more quickies on the ABA, if you don't mind.
Oh, go ahead.
So tell me how you and your colleagues got the players to play, right? Because obviously without quality product on the court, you're not going to go very far, right?
At that time, the NBA had only 6 teams when we first started, and they were paying the guys very, very small, limited dollars. And because we came on the scene, they had to increase their prices And we were able to get some players to come over with us because of the fact that they weren't getting very much money in the NBA at that time. And we helped, I think, improve the players a lot as far as money and stuff, and for families and all that kind of things. So I think in that regards is the way we were able to make our strides with the players.
So you saw this more. To them, this was more of an expansion of job opportunities for quality players that arguably could populate many more teams than the NBA had at the time.
Oh, absolutely. That was basically the reason, because they were getting sometimes like 10,000 or, and they were playing before good crowds and everything. And the owners of the NBA at that time were making a lot of money. And so, of course, when we came on the scene, it changed that because the players had another place to go,
Yeah, well, it seemed like the NBA was at least in a slow manner was at least starting to expand a bit, right? I think in 1968 they had gone up to 14 teams by then, right? So Chicago, relatively new, Seattle, the San Diego Rockets, Milwaukee, et cetera, right? So it's clear that they knew they needed to do something. But your arrival, right? Indeed, not only it certainly became a threat to the NBA, and it certainly expanded things rather quickly. So let me ask you this specific question. How much of the ABA model, at least in the early days, was also about stealing maybe some talent from the NBA to legitimize the ABA in the early days?
Oh, that was very, very important to us. Getting George Mikan, of course, was a very big attribute because he was very, very respected by everybody in basketball, not only as a player but as a person. He made a big difference in the way we did things, and he was the one that helped us make the thing happen.
Yeah, it seems that, so like the Rick Barry situation, right, in Oakland, right, where Pat,
Rick Barry was son of a wonderful person, and because that person that he was, his father-in-law, was very active in sports in his community, and because of that, we were able to get Rick Barry to join our league. When Pat Boone came in, he said, if Pat meets my financial requirements, he says, I'll make the move. So that's what happened.
Yeah, and it's clear. I mean, having him, but being prevented to play him until the second season, right? That obviously, but the fact that he was in process at least and then ultimately jumped, I mean, I think people like Barry and a handful of others, right, really, almost gave the league overnight credibility, even though not all the teams would benefit, right? Let me ask you this. The financing of some of these expensive NBA players, say like a Rick Barry, right? Was that all on the shoulders of the individual owner, or was there a bit of, league collectivism?
In the ABA, it was mostly on the owner. In some of the other leagues, as we started, you're right. It was a collective deal, but in the ABA, it was mostly on the owners.
Interesting. And so as the league got going then, what did you sort of see and feel that first sort of year or two? Clearly, there was some real breakthrough and some real interest and fan interest, but clearly there was also some shaky situations too, right? Not so stable, imbalance, that kind of stuff. What was your takeaway?
Well, because we did the thing in a short time, and because we did it in some cases, Chamber of Commerce gave us the wrong guy. Maybe in the city, he got involved and just found out that there wasn't that much interest, and so he gave up his team, and So that's why we moved around a lot, because a lot of the owners that we originally picked were not, they weren't the strong basketball fans and stuff, and they didn't want to keep on losing money, because most of our teams lost money the first few years. But because of that reason, we had a lot of movement. A lot of teams moved from one city to another, and that was a point of contention. But we were able, and thank goodness we did. We survived it. So,
would you say there was some naivete or on some of the owners in terms? I mean, the franchise fee relatively low, but it almost feels like they might have been a little naive as to how much they needed to actually have in the team during the actual running of the team. Beyond that,
oh, absolutely, that's true. What you just said was one of our biggest problems.
How did you overcome that? Was it simply we need to find a new owner, and hence a lot of the movement, or?
Well, we just had the usual stuff that happens in all kinds of businesses. Some make it and some don't, and that's exactly what happened in basketball.
All right, we'll be back with our conversation in just a moment. But first, a message from our friends at Warby Parker. I must tell you, friends, I cannot stand the process of getting eyeglasses. It's something that I've luckily avoided for most of my adult life, but it's unavoidable now. And the process of going into a store, meeting an optician, trying on frames, not knowing what the hell I'm doing, and having no fashion sense whatsoever, all of the whole process, completely intimidating. And that's why I was attracted to Warby Parker in the first place. And you can do what I did and avoid the hassles and the embarrassment and just the sheer frustration of the process by trying on the frames at home. All you got to do is go to warbyparker.com/goodseats and order your free home try-on package. What do you get? You get 5 pairs of glasses, I think is the appropriate English way to say that. And you get to try them on for 5 days for free with no obligation. And you try them on for your friends, your family, your loved ones, whomever, and see if they like what you think you might like. Obviously, you can see what kind of frames you like by going online first, by answering a few questions and choosing some of the frames you think you might enjoy the most. They come to you in a prepaid and return shipping situation there. You try them on, and I will tell you, it worked well for me. I tried on 5 pair at home with my wife and 2 daughters. The 4 first ones I tried on, they could not stand. I thought the first 2 or 3 actually looked pretty darn good, but they said no, and they win. That 5th pair, however, oh boy, seems like I hit the jackpot. And that's the one we went with, and we sent it back in with my prescription, and voila, about a week later, I got great sunglasses. Well, that's next, but I got great eyeglasses from Warby Parker, and the price, you can't beat it. There's no middleman, shall we say. Great frames, great styles, and the process could not be easier. Again, for you, our listeners, you can do the same thing. Head over to warbyparker.com/goodseats, take the quiz, get your 5 iFrame glasses situation set up for you, have them sent to you, and enjoy the process as I did. Fear no more the process of getting great prescription glasses. warbyparker.com/goodseats. Try them out. You will love them, as I have and still do. All right, let's go back to our conversation. Here it comes. How did you go about the arenas, and how did your ownership go after the arenas? Because I got to think that some of these buildings were a little leery or a little worried about what this was going to be, or maybe whether it was going to survive at all. Was the arena thing a problem and or relatively easy?
Well, no, they most of the arenas made us put up a strong bond or a strong amount of money for their seasons, because, as you said, they didn't want to get involved and lose any money on it. So we had to come up with some bonds, and we had to come up with some serious money in some cases.
And how about media and television? I mean, obviously not as important or as obvious as today, right? But The league really never had anything of a national television contract, or was media and broadcast rights and advertising, was that kind of...
That was tough. It was tough. And there was a lot of questions in new cities and stuff about whether, it could succeed or not. But basically, we were lucky, and because the NBA did not expand when they should have, before we were involved, they were happy to have a sports team in their community. So in many cases, they were very helpful to us,
All right, but let me ask you that. Maybe there's one last question about the ABA. Can we talk about the ball, the actual red, white, and blue ball? Do you have is there any story behind its origin? And I think it's also a business concept too, right? This ball.
Well, that was an idea that the Harlem Globetrotters started a long time ago. One of our owners was Jerry Saperstein, and the Harlem Globetrotters used the red, white, and blue ball, and so when we started our league, we decided we'd just continue doing that, and that's why we got started on that. But unfortunately, our legal department, and I kid Don Reagan a lot about this, did not patent the darn ball, and one of the companies grabbed the thing and went with it and made a lot of money on us. But Don, because he was a UCLA man, they were a little shaky at times,
So it's the fact that he went to UCLA instead of USC that was the cause of the revenues not coming from the ABA ball, huh?
No. You're giving me a business now. I don't want to get involved in that one. No, it was just one of those things that happened. And they had so much to do that they didn't cover the area of the pattern, deciding and making sure that nobody would use the ball at that time on a professional level. And unfortunately, we just made a mistake. That's all.
Well, do you remember how the idea of a red, white, and blue ball came about in the first place? Do you remember whose idea it was?
Well, yeah, it was Bill Sherman who came up with the idea.
Was the idea to use that as a patentable and or revenue stream, or was it just an idea, just as a promotional one, to be different than the NBA?
We wanted to be different than the NBA. That was the basic reason. And we thought the red, white, and blue ball would attract a lot of people, and especially the women,
All right, last question about the ABA. So give us a sense of how you felt about it after the first year or two. As you went around the league, you saw the excitement, you saw the maybe unevenness. Did you think that you had captured some lightning in a bottle here? Do you think it was successful, and or what were you worried about?
Well, we were at that particular time when I left the ABA, I just felt that we had good leadership in Don Reagan and Gary Davidson and George Mikan, and I felt the league was in pretty good shape administrative-wise, and our owners were very much involved. So we had a good group of people, and from there it went on and until the merger came about,
All right, here's my last question about the ABA. When you started this and helped put it together and get people involved and going, did you ever envision that the ABA would last long enough and be successful enough to achieve a very significant and very valuable merger years later, or did you have did you not really have any idea? Was that
to be honest with you, I didn't have any idea.
And did any of the owners sort of see that as, because clearly as we talk about various leagues and stuff, that some owners sort of recognize or feel that by starting something in a challenger league, their ultimate goal financially is to get, a franchise in the established league. Would you say that any of the owners kind of had that idea in concept, or was it really well, let's just challenge and do basketball better?
I think it was a combination of the two. I think some people went one way and some people went another way. depending on their financial structure. And like, in hockey, for instance, we started that in team tennis. We got Bob Kraft, for instance, interested. Looking Bob, now he owns the New England Whalers, and I mean, when you hear that Los Angeles owner got $2 billion for his team, you think, wow, what is Bob Kraft's team worth? And you've got to think of the fact that it was worth $5 million. It was like he took a chance and he made it. That's all. And some people, like in business, some make it, some don't, and some just hold on even, And that's basically the same way it was with the ABA.
All right. Well, I want to segue into the WHA in a second, but that's a good point. I want to bring that up. So, because you're probably one of the patron saints, right, of challenger leagues and all the leagues, and we're going to get to hopefully a bunch more of your exploits, right? But do you ever feel, I don't know, wistful, or do you ever sort of get a negative sort of feeling about sort of a lot of the things that you helped birth, right, indeed wound up becoming extremely successful and financially successful franchises and valuable things? Did you, how much did you get to participate in any of that? And or if not, do you ever relish some of not having some of that?
To be honest with you, if I had Gary and I and Don had been smarter, what we would have done is what Jerry Saperstein suggested, and that is to take a piece of every team. And we never did. If we had done that, I mean, money would have never been a problem for any of us. But, you never know. And when we started all these leagues, you never know whether it catches on or doesn't catch on. Just like in business, you don't know if a certain business will make it and certain businesses don't make it. And, it's just a gamble. And the owners that we had were men of foresight, and what they did is they took a chance, and some made it and some did not.
All right, so you get this ABA thing up and running, and at what point do you kind of start looking outside of the ABA, and where does this idea of perhaps doing the same thing for the world of hockey come about? Well,
it started, my thoughts became obvious when I was not an administrator at that time. I was strictly an organizer, and there's a big difference. An organizer is a guy that gets out and meets people and puts things together. That was kind of Gary Davidson's responsibility. So when the ABA, got to the point where they couldn't continue to get more teams, I started to realize that wasn't where I was going to be in my life, and so I had to think of something else. And so when we first started the ABA, they said ABA or hockey. So I decided to get involved in hockey, and I was lucky to know a couple of guys in Canada who really, really helped me so much to get the thing going. Bill Hunter and Benny Haskins. They were hockey people, and they helped me so much to get the thing started, and that's how that started.
So this was you and Gary again, right? Kind of putting the sort of foundation together for the WHA, or was this more your idea than his?
Well, it was more my idea, but he helped me, and the three of us, got to be very close, and we worked together on a lot of things. And they, at one time, we were involved with football, which Donald Trump, our president, was involved with the World Football League at one time. So it was just a matter of, where do you go, And in our case, in my case, it was hockey. So that's how my emphasis was, and because I knew Benny Haskins and Bill Hunter from Canada, they used to go to Palm Springs a lot in California, and that's how I got to know them, and that's how it got all started.
So you mentioned before how few teams there were in the NBA when you decided to sort of get this ABA thing going. The NHL, right, was probably even more slow and lagging to kind of catch on to expansion, right? I think you were kind of alluding to it earlier. I mean, up until 1969, right, the NHL only had 6 teams, which is hard to believe. They doubled in the Great Expansion to 12 I think in 69. But you even thought that there was a lot more that could be done in the realm of hockey, I think.
Especially in the United States, because hockey was at that time not big in the United States. I mean, they played it in some colleges and stuff, but it wasn't that big in the United States. And so that's basically one of the reasons why we moved our offices and everything. It originally started in San Diego, and so we, that's how it got all moving in the right direction.
Well, it also seems this seems like almost from the blueprint that you discovered or figured out with the ABA, right? There was not as many job opportunities, certainly in the United States, for professional hockey, and the salaries were low, right? I think in 1972, when you guys launched in earnest, I think the average salary was only, I think it was like $25,000, right? Which is probably the lowest of all the major sports leagues in the United States.
Absolutely, and at that time it was just unfortunate, but that's the way it was. So when we came aboard, because of Bobby Hull said, "You guys give me $1 million collectively, and I'll join you." And so we gave him his first. I don't know if people sometimes don't realize Bobby was one of the first guys to get $1 million for playing any sport. He was the one who brought, because of his popularity and because of the fact that he brought credibility, he was the one that had, we got 61 players in the first year from the NHL, and that was because of Bobby.
So it seems almost that the WHA was even more bold in its desire to steal talent from the NHL, even more than the ABA did for the NBA.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
And that got people's attention for sure, and I'm sure the money, right, with all the players, the allure of that money.
Well, everybody that joined our league, because of Bobby's credibility and because of the fact that we gave him $1 million, we got some very good owners, and we moved ahead, and we were so lucky to, get the right cities at the time, and we moved ahead, and we were very fortunate.
All right, we're going to leave it right there as we kind of just got heating up there with the World Hockey Association. But as we alluded to earlier, Dennis Murphy not only founded the American Basketball Association as well as the World Hockey Association, but went on to also found World Team Tennis, part owner and founder of the World Football League, was also the founder of Roller Hockey International, and had his hand in a whole bunch of other pro sports exploits as well. We're going to hopefully get to some of those in a couple of future conversations with Dennis in the weeks and months ahead. So please indeed stay tuned to this here little podcast feed, and we will look forward to sharing more conversations with the 93 years young Dennis Murphy on future episodes. You want to find out more about Murph and his history and his exploits, a couple of things I can point you to, both of which can be found at Good Seats Still Available, our little website. Just search up this episode with Dennis Murphy, and you'll find a link to the book written in conjunction with Richard Neil Graham, who was kind enough to kind of get the ball rolling and getting us connected to Dennis. And obviously, Richard was our guest in an early episode talking about the Roller Hockey International interesting stories and legends of that. So you can search for that on the website at goodseatsstillavailable.com. But you also find a link when you find this episode with Dennis Murphy to the book that Rich and Dennis co-authored called Murph, the Sports Entrepreneur Man and His Leagues. That came out in 2013. That's just a treasure trove of all kinds of reminiscences and interviews and all that kind of stuff about the great Dennis Murphy. And there's also a hard-to-find documentary out there. We got to sort of figure out a way to see where and when that was released and where it can be found. But we'll have more information for you on that at our website on this episode at goodseatsstillavailable.com. That documentary is called Game Changer, the Dennis Murphy story. That also came out in 2013, and it is a production of Global Sports Productions and Screaming Eagle Productions. So those two items are out there, and we will have links conveniently for you to get both of those at our website at goodseatsstillavailable.com. It's also the place you can find, of course, all of our social media feeds. On Twitter, you'll find us at Good Seats Still. On Instagram, you'll find us at Good Seats Still Available. You will find a Facebook page devoted to us as well. And of course, on the website, you will find a link to send us some email, but you can do that directly, of course, by sending that to hello@goodseatsstillavailable.com. You will also find a link conveniently on our website to subscribe to our weekly newsletter so you can be well informed and maybe early at that as to what our next episode is going to be for the coming week. And all kinds of other good stuff. Of course, you find all the links to all of our great sponsors and stuff there, too. Again, that's at goodseatsstillavailable.com. One last thanks to our friends at Podfly Productions, in particular, of course, the very good doctor, the esteemed Jerry Payne, and his team at Podfly Productions. Find out more about him and them at podfly.net. All right, thank you so much for listening to this very special episode. More to come with Dennis Murphy in the coming months, and we look forward to sharing that and lots of other great stories and nooks and crannies from the world of forgotten sports here on the great show, Good Seats Still Available. Thanks for listening. Take care, and until next week, the ticket window is now closed. Take care.
Jersey Americans, Jersey Americans, Jersey Americans, go, go, go! We're the Americans, Jersey Americans, and we're so proud of the day. The whistle blows, we're on our toes, shoot baskets is our aim. Go, go! We're the Americans, Jersey Americans.
Bobby Hull's story has to be one of the most exciting stories in sports. Hull is probably the most idolized player the game has ever known. After 15 record-filled years with the Chicago Blackhawks, Bobby Hull joined the World Hockey Association by signing a multi-million-dollar contract that made sports history. The WHA scored another first-year coup by signing network television contracts in both the United States and Canada, something that no other major sports league had ever done before. But according to Gary Davidson, the high point of the season was the new league's acceptance by the fans. What the fans saw, they liked. They came in increasing numbers, pouring through turnstiles from Boston to Los Angeles, Alberta to Quebec. Over 3 million of them in all, more than twice what the critics agreed would be a good first year's attendance. Even more significance is that the attendance figures improved as the season progressed. And now, with more stars coming into the league, Gary Davidson looks for that trend to continue.
Welcome to Good Seats Still Available, a curious little podcast devoted to exploring what used to be in professional sports. Here's your host, Tim Hanlon.
Hey there, everybody. How are you? This is Tim Hanlon, as announced. And of course, this is Good Seats Still Available, the curious little podcast that is devoted to what used to be in professional sports. As the clip you just heard gives some indication, we're going to get back into the World Hockey Association, the WHA. We had a great response to our very recent conversation with Curtis Walker a couple weeks back, as we got into the original version of the Winnipeg Jets. And the first part of that original version, of course, was domiciled as the oft champion of the World Hockey Association, the WHA. And in a bunch of responses that we got to that episode, it kind of reminded me that I thought that we had also started a conversation back when we had our interview with the great Dennis Murphy, he the founder of the World Hockey Association, along with Gary Davidson, the founder of the ABA, which we talked about with Dennis in that episode back in December of 2018. And obviously, Dennis went on to things like Roller Hockey International and a whole bunch of other things. But I digress. I thought for sure that we had perhaps done a little interview, and I think for whatever reasons we couldn't complete it. So I did some digging. And I guess we're going to sort of consider this a lost and found episode, because what was, I thought, lost is actually a good half hour and change of I guess, the beginnings of a part two conversation that we had with Dennis Murphy back again in December of 2018, about a year and a half ago. And frankly, is spurring me, hopefully, to get in touch with him again, if he's willing to not only complete this conversation, but get into sort of the latter part of his sports career with Roller Hockey International, et cetera. However, you're in for a treat with this little conversation, relatively brief as it may be. We tend to do hour-plus kind of episodes around here. But in here, you will hear a lot of first-person accounts of what was going on with this thing called the World Hockey Association, getting it started up, the beginning days, the initial impressions, a little what to worry about, what Dennis and his friends were not worried about. And that clip that you just heard was from the very first World Hockey Association, I guess you call it official film, featuring the dulcet tones of Chicago sports broadcasting legend Brad Palmer. He oft remembered as the professor, a longtime WBBM News Radio sports announcer, was on Channel 7 here in town in Chicago for a long time, was a longtime voice of the Chicago Bears, well known for his studious nature and quick knowledge of stats and memories and all kinds of factoids about not only the Bears, but also sports generally, hence the nickname. But Brad was also I don't know if he's the de facto voice of the World Hockey Association in the early years, but obviously he was narrating the official film for sure. And he was also the voice of the Chicago Cougars of the WHA, who played in the, I don't know what are the charitable ways of describing the International Amphitheater, but let's put it this way, it was probably not the highest order arena, either in Chicago or frankly anywhere to play hockey, maybe only beaten, so to speak, in terms of I want to call it decrepitness, but minor leagueness, I guess, from where Philadelphia was playing, the Blazers, where I think was in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, or maybe that was the Jersey Golden Knights or whatever, but whatever, Camden, whatever. There was a facility there in South Jersey that either Philadelphia or one of the incarnations of the New York franchise became the Jersey Knights had to play in. But I think the International Amphitheater was probably right up there in terms of being, let's put it this way, maybe not sort of a top tier feel. However, that doesn't stop us from going back into that of the World Hockey Association. And that clip, again, is a bit of an indication of some of the breakthrough that the 1972-73 initial season brought to professional hockey. It was mixing it up, and that's what we love to focus here on this show, are the challenger leagues and the teams that inhabited such. And there's probably no better example of that than the World Hockey Association, arguably quite successful in the end of the day with 4 franchises getting absorbed into the National Hockey League. Some call it a merger, some call it an absorption, some call it a capitulation. I don't know what you want to call it. People in Cincinnati and Houston are probably of a certain age who probably don't think necessarily that that merger / amalgamation, which the NHL sort of went on with, was necessarily fair to them. But however, that's also for another episode, another time. But as you may know, our episode with Dennis Murphy, episode number 129, you can certainly search that up if you want and maybe listen to that one in conjunction with this one. But we've done a lot of WHA conversations. Howard Baldwin, the former owner of the New England Whalers, a great guest. The late Tim Gasson, he the founder and the curator of the World Hockey Association Hall of Fame. Ed Willis, great conversation we had with him about a year and a half back. Dan Bouchard had some memories too. We talked about that with him and all kinds of other people and places around the WHA. John Sterling, of course, the New York Raiders, and his exploits. Lots to explore in retrospect with the World Hockey Association, but let's circle it back all the way to the beginning. Frankly, with the founder of such and many other leagues to boot. And this is our, if you will, our semi-part 2 conversation with Dennis Murphy, the founder of the World Hockey Association, coming up in just a moment's time. Thank you for sticking around. You're going to enjoy it. I almost guarantee. I absolutely guarantee that you will enjoy it. Before we get there, I want to say thank you to one of our great sponsors. And this week it's Streaker Sports, who can be found at streakersports.com, just like it sounds, streakersports.com. And of course, we want to call your attention amongst all the other sports stuff that they've got there, sports culture. They got all kinds of great defunct league stuff. Why don't you point your browser over to streakersports.com and go to the World Hockey Association tab, and you will be greeted by a plethora. I've been trying to use that word all day, a plethora of T-shirts with all the great logos. It's probably the most comprehensive, I think, that we've seen out there, including, of course, the Chicago Cougars, the aforementioned Houston Aeros, the ones that didn't make the cut, the Cincinnati Stingers also not making the cut when the merger time came around, but also some of the original versions of some of the teams that did. Of course, in addition to that, there's the New England Whalers shirt when they became obviously became Hartford. They're there and they're in a beautiful green kind of textured shirt, and there's also the very smart looking gray shirt with the white. Handsome WHA League logo. All of those shirts and more, and other sports for that matter, can be found for you at streakersports.com, the purveyors of sports culture they consider themselves. And of course, we have a promo code for you, and that's Good Seats. 15% off all of your purchases at streakersports.com, promo code Good Seats. So celebrate the WHA. Let us lift the glass in honor of our guest this week, Dennis Murphy, and why not buy a T-shirt or 2 or 7, at that matter, using that discount. And let's commemorate and remember at least a little bit of the origin story of the World Hockey Association with our semi-return visit with the great Dennis Murphy. Here's our chat we had about a year and a half ago, lost but now found. Please enjoy. So when we last were discussing, we were kind of getting out of the ABA, and what I'd really love to be able to do is get a sense of how you moved or considered going from the ABA and getting that off the ground to an entirely new endeavor with pro hockey. What was going through your mind?
Well, when we were in Miami, my owner, Tom Carney, who's a banker, wanted to sell the team.
And
So
I'm sorry,
told-
this is the Miami Floridians of the ABA.
That is correct.
Okay, got it.
And he wanted to sell the team. So a guy from New York by the name of Ned Doyle bought the team from Tom. And so when he bought the team from Tom, he had his own people, of course. And so I decided, together with my family, to go back to California. So we're in California, and all of a sudden the thought came to me, well, we made basketball happen, so maybe we can do it in hockey, because I didn't know too much about hockey. So I had a good friend Russell Knott, who turned out to be a good friend. He suggested that, maybe we get a hold of one of his friends who lived in Canada. And so we did. And the guy was named Bill Hunter, Hunter, Bill Hunter. And Bill used to go to Palm Springs often. So that's where he met Russell Knott. So he said, oh, sure, let me talk to this guy Murphy. So Russell set up a meeting for me and Bill Hunter. And Hunter was very active in hockey in Canada, especially with the Edmonton team. So we got talking, and he had a couple other friends, one by the name of Ben Hatskin from Winnipeg, another one by Scotty Monroe from Calgary. So we invited him to come down to California. I got together with my partners, Gary and Don Reagan, and they said, yeah, let's have them come down to California. So they came to California, the three of them, and we took them to a hockey game, and they loved it, and we talked hockey, and Bill said, I think I'm interested in working with you guys. So he started working with us, and we got the thing going, and I started traveling again and meeting a lot of people in the United States and Canada. We got it going again, and that's how it all started.
Yeah, so all of a sudden you're getting quite the reputation, I guess, with your now second league. But to back up for a second, you mentioned obviously Don Reagan, but two other people that for our audience, just to clarify, one, the Gary is Gary Davidson, of course, your partner in crime on the ABA and other things to come. And the Jerry who is the Jerry? I think I know, but maybe you can tell our audience who this Jerry character is.
Oh, did I say Jerry? I mean Russell Knott. Did I mention him?
Oh, got it. Okay, I thought you were referring to Jerry Saperstein, who I guess was not part of this.
No, Jerry Saperstein turned out, as you realize more and more as we go along, he turned out to be one of my very best friends. Matter of fact, we talk every week, so he's a very, very good friend of mine. And he's in Florida now.
Yeah. So I guess we'll get into Jerry in later endeavors, but he was not part of the WHA part, right?
No, he wasn't part of the WHA, although he was interested in becoming part. I just didn't have a spot for him at that time.
Got it. Interesting. Okay, so let me ask you this then. So it seems to me that one of the major concepts around the idea of going after the NHL with a new hockey league was this reserve clause. Is that a correct assessment that you felt?
That is the correct assessment, and Don Reagan did a wonderful, wonderful job in presenting it to the courts, and we won the battle with the National Hockey League.
I mean, did you think that was solely that was the major reason why perhaps the WHA could be successful, because you knew, or in your group's estimation, That it was weak in that regard?
People have asked me that, but the question that I always posed in my mind was there was only 6 teams in the National Hockey League, and there was a lot of interest in hockey, so there was a lot of cities that wanted teams, so it wasn't that hard to put together.
So that's an interesting point, right? The lack, if you will. This is circa late 1960s, right? I think a lot of people don't remember or understand that there were only 6 teams in the NHL up until
that is correct.
the Great Expansion in '69, right? So why do you think, as you were putting all this together, why do you think the NHL was so, shall we say, behind in terms of understanding and expanding by that point?
Their teams were making pretty good money, and they were very happy with their progress, and as it was, and so they pretty well confined that to themselves, in that area. The area of keeping it small and not expanding at that particular time.
Were there any particular markets that your group immediately thought would be natural and perfect for?
Well, Chicago was one of them.
Even though the Blackhawks were there?
Oh, yeah, the Blackhawks were very successful, but because of their success, we thought we'd be able to succeed. And we did because of one guy, and that guy was, of course, Bobby Hull.
Well, we'll get to Hull in a second, but I guess what I'm really trying to get into here is how you thought through the markets, right? Because something like Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, right? Those were all established NHL, right, cities. But then there was also these other cities that didn't have hockey. So it seemed like you were trying to kind of satisfy both, right? Markets that were big, that could support another team, as well as brand new markets that would love to have had professional hockey.
Well, one of the biggest problems we had, I blame myself for this, is expansion was the big thing with us. So I wanted to have as many teams as I could, and I think that was a mistake on my part. I should have, kept it to 12 or 24 or 16 or whatever, but not go to the tune that I was, trying to establish all over the country and all over the world. It wasn't the time for that, and I should not have done that, and that was my mistake.
But it did seem to me that it was sort of predicated. It almost felt like for you to be considered legitimate and professional, that you needed teams that were sort of in the major markets that could perhaps support a competing team in a WHA, but also the markets that were just dying, frankly, for a hockey franchise altogether, like a Birmingham or a Quebec or a Houston.
I think that's a pretty good point. My thought were, of course, to be honest, to expand as quickly as we can, and to be honest again, to make as much money as I could, So that, we were only charging at that time $25,000, which was a very small amount, but at that time it was a pretty good amount. So we were both greedy and secondly, not very smart.
Well, I don't know about that part. I understand the idea of a business enterprise, right? But I think it was not only smart but prescient, right? In that, I mean, you look back through history, circa 1969, it was only then that the NHL was adding some teams, but you guys were smart enough to recognize that hockey had some issues, some challenges, right? The reserve clause being one, the relative lack of franchises.
The reserve clause was a great job on the part of my partner, Don Reagan. He did a great job legally. And because of that, we were able to make a breakthrough. And that, I think the National Hockey League thought they would win that case, and they made a mistake, just like we all do. But they made a mistake in thinking that the courts would, go with them. And they did not. They went with us. So that was our luck.
But I guess that also, though, really stirred up a teapot of dissatisfaction by the players, not only in
Oh, yeah. Well, the players were as normal at that time. They were not paid very much. And, of course, with us coming into the scene, their salaries increased, immensely. So we were a dream to them, really, because we helped them get what they should have gotten in the first place.
So let me talk about that then. So what is the thinking as you get ready to find these teams and franchises and owners about players? What is your strategy, right? Obviously, we can talk about the Bobby Hull thing, right, which was part of a bigger strategy. Was it to literally raid some big players, or was it to find a whole sort of host of other players that just didn't have the opportunity to play professionally and give them a working wage? What was the strategy for players?
I think it was both thoughts. Of course, we were very fortunate to get, as I said many times before, Bobby Hull. Bobby brought credibility to his league, and he said to Don and myself and Gary, he said, if you guys come up with $1 million up front and the check doesn't bounce, we'll be very, very happy to join you guys. And not only did he join us, he brought 61 players with him from the National Hockey League, because their salaries were much less than ours at that particular time.
Anything in particular that you remember around sort of the chase for Bobby Hull, like why him and how sort of the negotiations occurred? Because it was a huge event.
Bobby was not only a great player, he was a man of tremendous extinction, dedication, and a man who the players all had a lot of respect for. And when he made the move, I think, in my judgment, they felt comfortable about the fact that our league was going to make it. So that's what they did on the whole.
Was Hull joking when he said he would only play for the WHA for $1 million? I mean, my sense is that there was a bit of a, like, that'll never happen, and then surprisingly, or maybe this was part of the PR strategy, $1 million showed up, if you will, to actually be legit in terms of being an offer.
Well, it was a legitimate offer, and that's what he wanted. He wanted us not to talk about it. He wanted us to show us the green. So we did it, and that, I think, was the big breaking point.
Let me ask you about the Jets and their offer, right? How much of that offer for him, for Hull, was a collective effort on the league, and perhaps was it a shared expense, right, where Winnipeg wasn't the only ones shelling out that kind of money? Was it a collective effort as much as it was the Winnipeg Jets' effort?
It was an absolute collective effort.
Okay.
Everybody pitched in. And some pitched in higher than others, but they realized that was a big breaking point, and so they all pitched in, and that was not hard to do. It was the guys just came up with it.
Doesn't that, though, I'm surprised, though, because, and we've gone back and forth in our previous episodes about sort of central ownership versus a franchise model, right? And you just described a franchise model as kind of the, obviously for the ABA and for the WHA, and frankly, most of your sports endeavors were franchise-oriented. Yet, here you're talking about something that's sort of for the betterment of the league. How do you balance that, where franchise owners kind of want to do their own thing and make their own way, and yet you want to get them to collectively do something like getting Bobby Hull?
Well, I think our ownership, the guys that we picked, were men who had successful businesses, and they realized more than ever that you needed something to go by. And Bobby Hull was our answer. And he turned out to be, and then from him, of course, we got Gordie Howe, and then we got Wayne Gretzky. I mean, you couldn't get three better names than those three in hockey. So I think our ownership, we had a good group of owners, and they all realized, and most of them were very successful in their businesses, and they felt that this was the way to go, and that's what Gary and I and Don did. We went that way with them, and thank goodness we did, because Bobby was that kind of a person.
What was the reaction of the NHL before Bobby Hull was announced? That is, the WHA was being formed, and perhaps what was the reaction of the NHL after his?
Oh, they really, from the beginning, they didn't think we had a chance. And to be frank with you, at the beginning, I didn't know whether we did or not. And thank goodness we had the right type of owners, and Gary and Don, and we made the right decisions.
So is it fair to say that the NHL kind of didn't give you much credit at the early part, and that was to their detriment and your early success in terms of getting attention and players?
Well, we found out later that there were other people who had tried to start leagues too, and they didn't do it. So I think the National Hockey League just felt like we did about baseball, that they were too strong, and nobody would tangle with them. And we made up our mind that was not the case, and so we went forward and did it. But we were lucky. We had the right ownership, and we had the right people join us from the players level.
Anything you remember from the early years, the early days of actual getting up and running and playing? The stadiums, right? Seems like there were some interesting challenges there, and the play, right, which was high quality, relatively high quality, surprising, but it wasn't smooth, was it? These early months and years.
Well, we made a lot of mistakes. We picked some people that we should not have picked. And unfortunately, those people caused us some problems, because a lot of people thought, here they go again. They're starting the league and they're going to fall on their face. But after a few years, it was discussed that the best thing to do is to merge, and we made the right decision there, too. We were just lucky we made the right decisions. I mean, we make decisions on the basis of whether you can make things happen or not, and we were lucky we were able to do it.
Any teams or markets or owners that you thought did or were really, really good and strong, and any others that you thought were surprisingly not so good? I mean, there's a ton of examples, right? Especially on the latter, right? I think about New York, right? The New York Rangers, right?
When you start off a league, you never know, and so we never knew that either way. We didn't know whether the guys were giving us a bunch of baloney, or with their statements and all that stuff, or they were right. We were lucky. We picked more winners than losers. That's all.
At what point did the idea of a merger sort of come into play in your ownership conversations? Right. I mean,
yeah, we. That was I really think some of the guys had that as their goal, and that's what happened. We did merge with both leagues, and the 4 teams in the ABA, and all together 6 in the NBA NHL. So we were just, Tim, just like everything else in life, take a chance, and some you win, some you lose, and we were lucky we won.
Let me ask you this question too about that merger. So, at what point, right, did the NHL actually come to a conversation with you, right? Because after having ignored you or not sort of given you the time of day in the early going, was this the NHL? All of a sudden,
I really think, and I want to give credit, I really think it was Red Auerbach. Red was so much against us at the beginning, But when he saw that we were serious and we were doing so well, he was, I think, the leading source of the National Hockey League that pushed for a merger. Red turned out to be a real good guy, and I really respected him tremendously.
When did you know that the WHA sort of had made it? I mean, you clearly had gotten some attention, with the Russians coming to play, the players, you were getting a lot of attention in markets that didn't have NHL. When did you kind of think you had really made some impact on hockey? It wasn't early on, was it?
We knew we had good teams, and we knew that if we played the National Hockey League, we'd give them a good battle, and that turned out to be correct. The Edmonton Oilers won 4 out of 5 Stanley Cups after they joined the NHL on the merger. And some of the guys wanted a merger, and some of the guys did not in our group. And the National Hockey League and us agreed that 5 of our teams would go over with them, and that's what happened.
Do you remember anything about which teams, like how the selection of the teams that were going to be merged occurred? Because I'm sure there were a few hurt feelings by some that were taken, like Cincinnati.
Of course, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Calgary, Quebec City were teams that were natural. They wanted to go into the National Hockey League. It was something that was always in their mind, and we were the source, and so that was what made it happen as far as the merger is concerned. The Canadians especially, they pushed real hard for it, and they were right, and thank goodness they were, because Edmonton, Winnipeg, and all the other teams that did very well with the National Hockey League.
As did Hartford, right, which was the only one from the United States that sort of made it. I guess my question is, my understanding is, man, maybe you remember the specifics, maybe you don't, that there were, from what I understand, 2 other teams that were kind of in the mix that kind of got shut out, that being Birmingham and Cincinnati. Anything?
Yeah, they wanted teams badly, and they had the financial backing. But, the National Hockey League, they were in control, really, basically, of the merger, because we were asking them to go in with them. If it had been the other way, maybe we would have been the same way, but that's what happened. We went in with them.
Okay, what about the legacy of the WHA? There were a bunch of rules, new rule changes, and obviously some quality players too. Is there anything that stands out in your mind as the WHA sort of flavor of hockey being different than the NHL and its legacy? Like overtime, I think, was a WHA.
That was our idea, right? Oh yeah, we had good rules. They had good rules, and we just combined the two and went from there. But basically, to be honest with you, I had very little to do with after they got together on the merger. So I didn't spend a lot of time in that area, because at that particular time I was also working with team tennis, so I was pretty busy, and so I didn't spend the time on the merger. But the guys who did a good job, I thought, and I hope they're doing a good job today, and I think they are. So let's just hope that things keep going well for everybody in hockey.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we have to leave it there, and it's all coming back to me now. This is a year and a half ago, so shoot me for forgetting. But I believe we had set up, or at least I had thought we had set up the time to go deep into the WHA, like we did with our earlier episode with the American Basketball Association. But I think Dennis had gotten the time wrong, and he had some other appointment to go to, and he profusely apologized at the end of this clip. I saved you from that. I just foolishly have not followed up since, because I just kept going on with other episodes and whatnot, and we had a great response to the ABA episode. But I probably do owe Dennis another call so we can hopefully maybe go a little bit deeper into the WHA story and, frankly, some of his other exploits. He was involved in the World Team Tennis thing. We're going to get into that in a couple of weeks with a couple of guests, finally, luckily. And certainly Roller Hockey International, which we've had a cup of coffee with our pal Richard Neil Graham. And we have another episode probably featuring a very special guest going to be related to that as well. So, Dennis, if you're listening, we will probably try to give you a buzz sometime in the weeks ahead, and maybe we can sort of complete the circle of all of your Challenger League goodness that we bow reverentially in your general direction in thanks to sports fans or from sports fans all over the place. Without pioneers like you and your cohort in crime, Gary Davidson, and a whole bunch of others, I don't think would have such an interesting and colorful history to go back into each and every week here on this show, as well as the current amazingness of pro sports if and when it comes back into its full glory. A lot of the pioneering efforts and vanguards of those things that we enjoy today came from a lot of your innovations back in the day. All right, we want to, before we run, thank you for not only listening, but for following us on social media. We're at all kinds of different places. You'll find us on Instagram at Good Seats Still Available. You'll find us on Twitter at Good Seats Still. There is a Facebook page devoted to us. So just search us up there. And if you forget all of that and just want more, all the various episodes that you just may have missed, why don't you point your browser, whatever version of Firefox or Microsoft Edge or Chrome, whatever you use these days, to goodseatsstillavailable.com. Yep, that's our website. Every single stinking episode, including this little mini Lost and Found, will be found literally and figuratively on that site. Of course, why don't you make your life a lot easier by just simply subscribing to wherever you get your podcasts? That's the easier thing to do, for God's sakes. But either way, please continue to come and enjoy our little drizzle of content that we throw out each and every week to you in our silly little genre of forgotten sports. We appreciate your passion, your interest, your proverbial cards and letters. You want to send us some email, go ahead. We're at hello@goodseatsstillavailable.com. And, yeah, don't forget, on the website, just if you search for it, I need to call it out a little bit more easily, but there is a little link in there, if you just search around for it, to get onto our weekly email newsletter. Just give us your name and your email address, and we will not share it with anybody. No spam, we promise, but we will send you each and every week a little head start to what will be the topic du, I don't know, it's whatever the French word is for week. Because we do it every week, and we'd like to send a little early advance notice to our friends to be in the know. Just sign up for that email newsletter on the website. One last bit of news, let's say, not news, but thanks, kudos, if you will, to our pal Jerry Payne down in Metro Atlanta, who is safely distancing from all that might ill him and his colleagues down there. He's doing all the right things, and including, of course, putting all of our editing pieces together for this episode and all of our episodes to date. And we appreciate his efforts, as always. It's Jerry Payne, Audio Excellence. And this week, once again, he has risen to the call. We appreciate him. We appreciate you. And I thank you tremendously for listening. And let's leave you again with, we always look for an excuse for, great theme songs and great audio. And although we've played it before, why the hell won't we play it again? Because it's probably the best and maybe the only that I know of. If you know of any others, please let me know. The theme song, the best theme song, maybe the only theme song of the WHA's motley crew of teams, and that, of course, being the New England and then Hartford Whalers. Here it is. It's the song you know, you love, you can't live without it. It's the Brass Bonanza. Here it comes. Take care, everybody. See you next week.